Hi guys.
Hello, everyone. Hi, thanks for joining. All right, we're going to have a super exciting session today. I'm just going to make add Gus to the spotlight. All right, so we'll give people just a few more moments to arrive. Now, please don't feel shy to mention who you are in the chat. Maybe say what stage company you're at, maybe what vibe coding tool, any particular questions you've got. And then we're going to talk for sort of 45 minutes. And then in the meantime, while we're talking, please post any questions you've got in the chat. We'll look at the chat periodically. And then we will, maybe the last 15 minutes, you can come on air and talk about any questions you've got. And I'll hand over to Gus to answer all the hard ones and I'll take the easy ones. All right. So we'll give like 3 more minutes. If anyone's got any questions, don't feel shy to pop them in. Don't feel shy to introduce yourself. I will put my LinkedIn details in there right now. And okay.
Are we allowed to introduce ourselves in audio or just text?
Just on chat, otherwise it probably won't be scalable. But it's a good idea, but not scalable. But thanks.
No worries.
Okay. All right. So, hi, Diana. Looking forward to your lovable questions later. Okay. So, now, maybe without further ado, let's begin. So, hello, everyone. I'm founder and CEO at Seed Legals. I'm Anthony, and I personally use Lovable at least 4 times a week. What happens is I see people coming to me at Seed Legal saying, "Can you review my website?" And once upon a time, I would give them lots of feedback, or a small amount of feedback as time may allow, on their website. And now what I do is instead I just go to Lovable and say, make a better version of the website. And I'll tell you the prompt I use in a few minutes. And then Lovable comes up with something fantastic. It's unbelievable. But the problem is, it's just like a web page. There's a big difference between a cool looking web page and a full application. And so in this session with Gus, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, we're going to dive into how do you create a prototype? How do you test the prototype? What's the right time to start bringing in developers? When should you turn it into something full? Do you insource, outsource, remote source, whatever it might be? And what's the way in this new world where we've saved fortunes by not needing to build something from scratch, but we've created a different problem for ourselves by going from mock-up to production. And so I meet lots of interesting people at Seed Legals. And when I met up with Gus and the team, I loved the idea that there was this now new form of bridging between I vibe coded something, it's awesome, what do I do next? And getting something live to the world. So without further ado, Gus, over to you.
Hey everyone. So I'm Gus Spathis. I'm the founder and CEO of Xogito. Xogito is a product development firm. We help entrepreneurs take their dreams, make them reality. We've been doing it for over 20 years now. And companies currently has a little bit over 200 engineers. My own background, I'm an engineer from way back in the early 90s. I started out my career doing a lot of work in computer graphics and actually artificial intelligence, leveraging AI that was popular back then called genetic algorithms. I moved into the internet space back in 94, right after it was commercialized. And I was very much part of the Internet 1.0 boom and helped launch a number of the great companies you may have heard of. Um, I also, for IBM, I did Deep Blue versus Kasparov. I was on the Deep Blue side when we beat Kasparov, and right after we beat Kasparov, I remember him coming down the elevator to go out on stage, and he stopped by the room we were all in, and he cursed us out, and then continued on to the room because he was so upset he lost. Um, he basically thought everyone cheated, but we won fair and square. From there, I went on and I created a number of products that were pioneering in the AI space. And I've helped, I'd say, hundreds of entrepreneurs launch and build products. So nice to meet you all.
All right. So you've been around, not your first rodeo. You're from the days of like actual iron servers in your office. And then, most people, I was born back then, but many people on the call weren't. So that's the perfect intro, how things have evolved. So you're going to present, Gus. Over to you to take it away.
Great, great. Um, so hopefully everyone sees my screen
We
from
can.
vibe
Yeah.
coding to the real deal.
And I
Um,
love your graphic, the Jetsons and all. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so let me put it in. Here we go. So great. I think we went. Oh, I also did the first white and yellow pages on the internet. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that way back in the early days. Our big competitor was a skinny kid from South Africa who was a little bit weird by the name of Elon Musk. I'm happy to say that we beat him when he was doing Zip 2. Our product was a lot better. Of course, he went on to far greater things. Um, so that's a little bit about me. Do you want to start the
Yeah, no,
a little bit
let's keep going. Let's keep going. So, vibe coding is amazing, right? The gist of it is that once upon a time you had an idea, and by the way, if you want to stop screen sharing for a sec, so, once upon a time you had an idea as a founder, and then you'd have to spend and raise lots of money to get developers before you could build anything, before you could test anything. And then along came the early prototyping tools, and then came Figma and so on. And then you could make a mock-up. So the idea was once upon a time, it was build it and they'll come. And then we learned about Agile and we learned about MVPs and so on. And we learned that we should make a mock-up first. But make a mock-up was, fairly hard. But then came vibe coding, and vibe coding changed pretty much everything because not only could you make a mock-up more easily, but your mock-up could be intelligent and could work and could do stuff. And also you can use prompts on Lovable, like do a competitor analysis. So you can make even better mock-ups, and I'll tell you about my prompts in a few moments. But now that just leaves you stuck a few steps later, right? So where you get stuck has moved progressively later. And for some sites and for some things, you can vibe code everything. But for most things, I think we're going to find that we need to, as a founder, either I need to learn coding myself, or I need to spend a lot more time doing prompt engineering to try and build something and then learn about APIs and API keys and, Firebase and other things, or I'm going to hire someone to do it. And I think on this call, my goal is everyone on the call gets educated as to where it makes sense as a founder, perhaps a non-technical founder, to keep going yourself, and where it makes sense as a founder to call in an expert or hire someone internally. All right, so now with that in mind, Gus, back to you.
Great. So you mentioned vibe coding. So what is vibe coding? Well, you can see on my screen this guy, Andrew Karpathy. He is a giant in the artificial intelligence world. He was head of full self-driving for Tesla for a while. He was over at OpenAI for a while. He makes some of the best AI YouTube content. Urge you to watch his stuff. He's very technical, brilliant, brilliant engineer. And he coined the term vibe coding, um, a long 10 months ago. It's amazing
It's
how quickly.
unbelievable. It's like it's a term that's existed forever, but it's only February this year. It's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I thought we would start out with the original definition of what vibe coding is, and in Karpathy style, he tweeted it out, and it's a new kind of coding he calls vibe coding, where you give into the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that code exists. You're just talking to an AI who's doing what you want it to do. Um, I ask for the dumbest things and go with whatever the AI does. And the code grows beyond my comprehension. And it's essentially throwaway code. You're testing out different ideas, different approaches. You want to make it so that it's really cheap and easy for you to throw it away and start anew. And this is not just for simple UI prototypes, but I've been working on a very, very complex project, a project that a short 5 years ago would have taken a team of probably 50 developers well over a year to develop. And I've vibe coded it over the weekend myself. And not only did I vibe code it once, I vibe coded it probably at least 5 different times. And each time it was a different architectural approach because I was looking to solve a different problem. So the creation of that code itself was so cheap with today's tools that I'm able to rapidly iterate and run these experiments. And that's really what vibe coding is great for.
So, by the way,
Anyway,
talking very quickly about the coding being cheap, one of the really interesting things is for companies raising investment. Once upon a time, the investors used to value the time and cost and IP that had been put into the code. That if the cost of the code can go to zero, then something else has to be the valuable piece. And we may touch on that later because that's going to be an important thing for founders, how they show the value in their company to their investors if it's vibe coded. And that, by the way, doesn't mean you shouldn't vibe code it. I need to spend $200,000 on the prototype because it's going to be more impressive to the investors. Don't do that, but show that the core value sits with the traction that you've got with the users, with maybe the patent if you got it, with the idea, not with the execution, at least not until your later stage. Back to you, Gus.
absolutely. You know, in the pre-AI days, a lot of what we're doing now with vibe coding, we used to call rapid prototyping, clickable prototypes, mock-ups, demos, wireframes, all different names. And there has been company after company after company that tried to tackle this problem, if you will. The old Apple HyperCard is a software that some people may remember, or Macromedia's Flash. Um, Visual Basic was originally thought of as a rapid prototyping tool, something that someone who wasn't a computer scientist could very rapidly throw something together and at least test out some ideas. And there's been endless amounts of dollars put into this specific problem. I would say these things always peak for a bit and then they kind of die away. And today what we're seeing is really the rise of a whole bunch of vibe coding tools. And some of the simplest, you mentioned Lovable. It's a brilliant piece of software and it keeps getting better. And I would say it's starting to encroach upon a lot of the mid-tier tools as well. V0, Bolt, Replit are some of the simplest tools. They're very easy to use. You don't need to be a computer scientist to really understand how to leverage their power. And I urge every entrepreneur to get really comfortable with leveraging these tools as much as possible.
And by the way, I like seeing this list here because it neatly divides it, assuming that is neatly dividing into sort of the ones that as a non-tech founder you would just use to create a prototype versus the ones that your software team might use to program more efficiently and faster, but you probably not as a non-tech founder going to use them yourself.
Absolutely. And as you look out and you start hiring your own engineering staff, if you hire your own engineering staff, or you look for partners to help you implement some of your products, you're going to want to keep these names in mind. If you're working with someone and they're not leveraging these tools, you're throwing dollars out the window that you don't need to, and quite significant dollars. And I'll touch on some metrics later, so you understand the radical transformation this entire industry is undergoing right now. So, I would say in this fast-moving field, probably 6 months ago, the leading tools was probably Windsurf, Cursor, and Augment Code was just starting to get on the radar. OpenAI attempted to acquire Windsurf, and that became a sort of a fiasco of epic proportions. I think we're still seeing the results of that playing out in the market. Sadly, Windsurf, which was a great product, I think has started to really lose a lot of users because of everything that's gone on. And Cursor is risen to, I would say, probably the #1 spot. It's a fantastic tool. It's a very traditional programming tool. You basically have your editor in the middle, you've got your list of files on the left-hand side, and you've got your little chat window on the right where you actually talk to whatever AI you're using. And in all of these tools, you can select OpenAI's ChatGPT, you could select Anthropic, the various flavors of Claude. You can select others as well, more esoteric. And then there's the group of emerging tools that really are meant for folks who really understand what's going on in the code and have some familiarity with command lines. And these are like Claude Code, you may have heard of. OpenAI has Codex, and Google recently launched Anti-Gravity. Of these three, you can argue this is a horse race and it's changing. Feels like it's changing every week, but right now I think I'd give Claude Code the edge, particularly when you're leveraging the Opus 4.5 model. In fact, the thing that has shocked me the most is I was using Claude Code with Opus 4.5 over the weekend, and I asked it to implement this highly complex system, and it basically one-shotted it. For those who don't know what one-shotting means, is I put in a prompt. It's a very long and detailed prompt explaining exactly what I wanted it to do. I hit enter, and then I went and had a coffee, and by the time I came back 30 minutes later, it had literally coded tens of thousands of lines of code, and I ran it, and the first time I ran it, it worked perfectly. It was stunning. That rarely happens that never happens, and certainly not with systems this complex. Give you a sense of that, what I was building was based on leveraging 2 new academic papers around architectures for very complex AI-based systems. So I fed Claude Code 2 research papers, which are extremely dense and not always very clear, and it built the system perfectly.
Very cool. Okay.
And to go further, if you have familiarity with the command line, or you're willing to watch a couple YouTube videos, I urge you to download Claude Code and use it. Not only is it incredibly good at implementing systems, it's good at doing pretty much whatever you want. If you want it to build a marketing plan, it will, and it will do a ridiculously good job. If you want it to, in fact, we use it to analyze acquisitions, and we give it all of the financial documents. We give it checklists that it should go through, and it spits out questions to ask. We put in the answers, and it goes through, and it gives us yes or no decisions on various aspects of an acquisition. Claude Code is truly one of the most powerful tools once you learn how to use it. So those are some of the latest vibe coding tools.
I
Should
have a
we?
question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Go for it, Jen, and then we'll just put, if you can put in the chat, please, so that we can have, and then we'll get to that. So, but thanks. All right, let's go to the next slide in the meantime.
Great. So for a moment, let's say you've done the great job of building your prototype. You've vibe coded it. It's running, and the big question is, why can't you just push it directly to production? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with that? Well, the real problem is you have two big problems, I'd say. Most vibe coding is a demo. It's not an actual product. It usually implements something we call the happy path. So it's the most typical way the entrepreneur thinks that their product should be used by eager and smart and folks who are willing to read documentation. Problem is, once systems get out into the wild, you hit real users, and real users don't want to read help documentation. They want to click buttons in random ways. They want to put in more data in the fields than you support. You have all these different things that happen. And so the happy path is rarely the normal path once users get it in their hands.
Okay, so by the way, Gus, if you stop screen sharing for a moment so I can wave my arms, and then I think that takes us neatly to, moving from vibe coding to bring in people or more advanced tools. So let's start right at the beginning with my favorite bit, which is going to Lovable. And I use Lovable in one of two ways. The second way I'll start with, which is Seed Legal's customers message me for asking feedback on their website, and the website isn't very good. So what I do is I go to Lovable and I say, and by the way, I use Whisper Flow, which is voice to text software. It's changed my life. I've dictated more than 1 million words over the last 6 months. So I just go to Lovable and I talk at it and I say, make a better version of the website at, URL. Explain how we, and then you say the problem you solve, how we save you 30% on your monthly insurance. And then we say, make the section below that explaining how we use AI to connect brokers with whatever. And then another section below that. So you tell it, the key selling points. Then I tell Lovable, do a competitor analysis to show why insert name of this site is better than competitors. And this is the genius that was never possible before, because with Figma or Canva or whatever, you just draw boxes. But here, it's going out on the internet and finding out competitors. Now, I don't know if it finds real ones or just makes stuff up as it goes along, but it's awesome. And then I say include customer testimonials, and obviously it makes those up, but your site now comes to life. And sometimes these testimonials that comes up, it's unbelievably clever. So I was making a site for a friend who's a driving instructor in Australia, and I said include testimonials from Sydney eastern suburbs, people looking for driving tests. And it made these from different demographics, from different named suburbs in that part of Sydney. It was unbelievable. Then I say include a pricing section, and here Lovable is going to come up with pricing. The pricing may be way off, but it's going to challenge you because it's going to come up with pricing models that actually are plausibly much better than you had in mind. There'll be a small, medium, and large, and one-off a subscription and so on. It's very clever. And then I say, include at the top and bottom of the page big calls to action to sign up now and book a meeting. And then I say, make it a vibrant, modern style and include rich lifestyle graphics. And then I go make a cup of coffee. I've got a nice Italian machine. By the time it's warmed up and I come back, I've got the website. And usually I'm blown away by it. So this is fantastic. But it then leads to a few issues. The first one is it doesn't really do anything. It's just like a one-pager. The second problem is then I go, actually, I don't like the image at the top right. Can you switch it for another image? And then it's like I'm talking to a delinquent child as it replaces it with the image in the wrong place and it puts the wrong, it's like, for God's sake, just, you want to like reach out and just touch it and move it around, but you can't. The next thing is, as you said, it's the happy journey, right? So there's a login button, but it doesn't do anything. But half the time people log in, they forgot they logged in with Google and now they log in with email. So you have to sort that one. And then if you're using MFA, they forgot the code. So there's all this stuff behind it before it even does anything. And the last part of it is when I look at people's websites these days, most websites look like they were vibe coded by the same tools. They're identical. And I think as an investor, that's hugely off-putting. It was obvious to me you made your website in 15 minutes. It's got the same style. They're like 3 boxes, and then underneath there's another section. So you have to go a lot further. And that's where the rich lifestyle graphics comes in to try to make your site look different to the others. So to me, the most interesting part of this discussion is that vibe coding has been awesome at letting me come up with an idea. I can share it with people. I can get feedback. If they don't like it, I just kill it, move on to a different idea. If they like it but don't understand it, I can tweak it. But at some point, it now needs to do something. And then I've got to, reach in and tweak the little pieces. So with that as the approach, just before we get back to you, there's a nice question in the chat, which is, can I pass something from that's been built by a simpler AI system into a more sophisticated AI system and tell it fix that and make it better? Now back to you, Gus.
As I put in the chat, absolutely you can. Not only you can, you should. I would suggest, given the way these AIs work, I would suggest you give it to it and ask it what it sees wrong first, and then ask it to create a plan off what it saw was wrong, and then ask it to go execute the plan and fix those things. By forcing AI to think in steps, they do a much better job than saying just go fix that. It's part of this thing called chain of thought reasoning, and it's being incorporated into many products at this point. But
okay.
All great points. So as I was saying, a vibe coded demo is awesome. Now you've taken it out, you've shown it to a bunch of people, you've got a lot of excitement around it. You want to put it into production, and you want customers to actually start touching it. And what you're going to see is customers are going to touch it in different ways than you expected. And you have to worry about things like security. And there's many different kinds of securities you need to worry about. When thinking about sort of the hidden risks of vibe-coded AI-generated code, it is particularly a problem for folks who are not engineers and don't understand what's going on at the code level. You have a couple different security issues that you need to always consider. The first is the security of your customers. So somebody comes to you, let's say you vibe coded a CRM for dentists, for example, and it's a great CRM. Dentists love it. You're getting a lot of traction. Dentists are going to upload all their patients in there. Well, now you've got is that list of the dentist's patients secure, or could somebody steal that somehow? What about stealing the credit card the dentist put in to pay for the service? All these you could think of as customer security needs, and vibe coding has a tendency to create situations where it's easy to get that kind of information. And you don't want that. Nothing will kill a promising startup quicker than a sudden security breach that's in the local newspaper, and it will cause investors to flee. So that's a big deal. The other issue you have to think about is corporate security. And by corporate security, I don't mean your customers' information, it's your own company information. So the list of who your customers are, important things like what are things that are called API keys that you use to plug into third parties, passwords into other services. These things are incredibly valuable assets that you need to protect and not allow third parties to get control of, because they can use it and run up bills and cause you a lot of grief as a result. The other even worse scenario is you vibe code a product, throw it up there, and all of a sudden some nefarious hackers get control of your infrastructure, and now they're using your infrastructure to attack consumers or to attack other corporations. This is actually fairly common. When you hear about these large-scale DDoS attacks, what's happened is hackers have gone out and they've taken over infrastructure of companies and are using companies' infrastructure to attack sites that the companies themselves don't know that's happening. These are
so how do we avoid these things?
So that's where you have to be a lot more understanding of what's going on at the code and at the infrastructure level. And that's where you need to bring in experts who can help you get to the next level. If you've vibe coded something and you're feeling pretty good about it and you want to put it up there, and you have a tolerance for risk and you don't have a lot of sensitive information there, take what you've done, give it to another LLM. So if you've done it using OpenAI ChatGPT, give it to Gemini and say, Gemini, do you find any security issues in here? And Gemini will tell you. It's actually pretty good at that. So it's always good to cross-check your work between the different LLMs. So if you do something in one, ask the other what it thinks about it, and then take that and feed it back into the original one, and you can watch them improving with each iteration. So that's a good way of doing it that reduces the risk, but by no means gets it down to zero. If you want to get your risk down as low as possible, you're gonna need to have experts help you out there.
Okay. And so, I actually hadn't really thought of it, but one use case is, apart from I've now vibe coded and I need to find some humans to go build the real version, there's I vibe coded and it pretty much works. I need some humans to do a security test on it to make sure that I haven't missed anything, either obvious or, more sophisticated attacks. Okay.
Absolutely. Great.
So I'll grab a couple of questions. So there's one question which is about copyright. So obviously, one of the key issues with AI coding is, where the copyright sits. There were people in the past who said, no, you shouldn't generate AI code because you don't have the copyright. I think the world's moved on. When you hear that Microsoft or Google, like a half of all their code is written by AI, it's like, people saying don't use a record player or something. It's like, dude, you're in the dark ages. The world's moved on. One of the questions is, which account do you use when you log in on these platforms? You want to, for the purpose of your investors later, have all the IP owned by the company, so try to use a company account. But in many cases, AI isn't doing anything different. You might have bought the domain name in your own name, or you might have, GitHub is in your own name or whatever. But ultimately, when you go raise investment, all the IP, intellectual property, needs to be assigned by you to the company. Normally, that is when you've got a founder agreement and so on. There's a question about, should you put a copyright notice in? I mean, sure, but it's pretty much a waste of time. Nobody goes checking for copyright notices. The fact it says C something or other, if somebody tries to show that it was your code or you try to show it was your code that somebody nicked, you can point to the copyright notice. But I mean, that doesn't really happen. So sure, add copyright, takes literally 30 seconds, but I think it provides almost no value. All right. Should we move on with more
Actually,
slides? Yeah.
actually, before we do, I just want to
Yeah.
build on what you said. And you mentioned this earlier. You know, as I go through my journey in my career, in the early days, what you would do is you would go out and you would raise a huge amount of money, and you would have to go and you would have to buy physical computers, and you would have to buy the racks to put them in. And then you would go take the rack and the computer and stick it in a data center. And then you would have to get engineers to write the web server because there was no web server. And then, only then, could you write the code to implement your product and get it out there. And if you wanted to do a startup, you were easily looking to raise between $5 million and $10 million as a seed round. Forget about expansion or anything like that, just to put together your MVP. And what we saw with the rise of open source software, we got a pre-written web server. We've got all these pre-written frameworks that allow us to build our product and not everything underneath it. And that helped reduce the cost of launching a business by 10 times. Then we saw the rise of the cloud computing. And now I no longer need to go out and buy computers and rack them and stack them and all that stuff. And that has reduced the cost of software of launching these businesses by another 10 times. And when the value of a business back in the 90s was the computers, the racks you had the computers in, the code that you wrote for the web server, and the code for your product. And what's happened over time is the value of all this stuff is moving closer and closer to the entrepreneur and towards the idea. No longer do investors value the computers you own. That's basically not valuable at all. They don't value the fact that you're using Apache's web server. They value the code you wrote. Today, not today, but tomorrow, in a couple months probably, maybe in a year, they're not going to value the code because the code can be written by AI overnight. So where does the value go? The value goes actually even closer to the entrepreneur. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's the spec. It is the idea and your expression of that idea in a document that's used by these tools to actually generate that code. So vibe coding originally started out as this, hey, let's just go with the flow. But today it's been redefined to mean any engineering leveraging AI. And so we've gone from very loosey-goosey to something that's going to be very rigorous and that's going to allow you to be much closer to the value of your business than it was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago.
Okay, so very quickly, a couple of good questions, which are, vibe coding or no code. This is one that I've been intrigued by. Where does that sit? Why would you choose one versus the other? Could you vibe code and then start using no code tools, or are no code tools like code tools history swept away in the dust of the AI revolution?
I think no code tools are really kind of an expression of vibe coding as well. So you're just trying to implement the idea, and in vibe coding, you're doing it generally using language. In no code tools, you're generally doing it by moving boxes and arrows and lines all around. So kind of different sides of the same coin almost.
Okay. All right. So let's, I'd like to get to the heart of, you're an untech founder. When do you need to bring in people? Do you learn to code yourself? Do you keep going? Do you give up months of your life trying to do it yourself? Do you raise money and bring people in to pay somebody to do it? Let's zoom into that. And okay, so we've got some of the security things. Back to you.
So really, that's a bigger question. It's like, where is this all going? We're coming from an era where we interact with technology by clicking buttons, moving dials, putting data into forms, and hitting submit buttons. We're moving into an era of agents, and you will see this, I believe, will take over the world. And agents enable completely new ways of thinking about technology and thinking about getting work done. I think entrepreneurs need to absorb what agents are and rethink their businesses and reimagine their businesses to leverage agents. So, the question is, what's an agent? Do you want to chime in here, Anthony?
So I'll start with my definition, right? Which is, when you start by going to ChatGPT, you can ask some questions, it'll tell you some answers. It's very nice, but you can't ask it to do very much. You can't say, pay this bill, or, connect with my HubSpot to answer these customer web chats, or, customers ask for a refund, connect to Stripe to give them a refund. So agents are the next level. It's going to change everything, because by being able to connect to external systems, the AI is the brains, but it can then do all of these things outside of its little world. And when it now comes to vibe coding, that means that you're going to get another 10x value add by the things that you want your app to do. If there are gateways that it can connect to third-party systems, you can build vastly more sophisticated things with very little extra effort. And that is super exciting. I mean, I can imagine a future of all these agents acting on my behalf, doing things, booking trips or doing my email or whatever it is. So that's obviously in the Jetsons view, but many of these things will be not far away. The obvious early ones are, to use agentic AI for some of your customer support. So when somebody asks something, imagine you go to an airline and you ask, can I get a refund? Well, what happens. The chat thing gets you to go, thanks, now call an operator. But the agentic part is when it actually connects to whatever their payment gateway is and processes that. And then you just got way more power at your disposal.
Absolutely. So, when I say agents and they're going to transform software, I'll give you an analogy. We recently built a system for an entrepreneur. And I can't tell you the exact details, but I'll tell you roughly what it is. So this particular type of individual gets thousands of email messages per day inquiring about some resource. And the resource is a resource that's constantly negotiated, and everybody wants to negotiate their own thing. And sometimes people are credible and have the money and the wherewithal to acquire the resource. Other times they're just kicking the tires. And so individuals who do this job are overwhelmed with this inbound email. And so this founder came to me and said, hey, I want to build this system where all these people will go to this website, they'll log in, they'll create an account, they'll do these things, they'll receive a notification and all that. And so I said, hey, why don't we reimagine what you want to build here? And he was very skeptical. He didn't think it would work. He's like, no, I want to build it my way. I want a web page where somebody logs in and all that. And I convinced him to give me 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, we built a system that basically plugs into these individuals' email and automatically scans their emails. And when it finds someone who's making an inquiry about this resource, it automatically passes that email message to an agent. And the agent negotiates with the individual for all the different terms associated with this particular resource. And the agent goes back and forth with the individual until they come to some agreement, and then it presents it and says, hey, I got a deal. Do you want to do the deal, yes or no? And the person can say yes or no. And if they say yes, then that's passed off to another agent that actually writes up the contract and does all the contracting. So we went from creating a very traditional SaaS platform where you log in and you do everything in that old style to a new way of doing things using agents that's radically more powerful and far more efficient for both sides of that transaction. So what an agent is really an autonomous software entity that has goals and gets stuff done for you. It does it for you. It doesn't ask you to go do it. You don't have to go in there and manipulate the dials and the knobs and the levers. It'll take care of it for you. It's like you get into the Tesla and you hit full self-driving and it drives you to your destination. You don't have to worry about it. That's what an agent is, and it will radically transform software and business. And if you guys start thinking in that way and incorporating it into your businesses, you're going to be the leaders of this next great wave.
I think that's super interesting because, we imagine, naively just AI is an assistant to do what we want, but I'm always wondering how we reinvent our own business in a new way. So on Seed Legals, you can log in and you can say, I want to create a safe or a seed fast in the UK, but what if it could just connect with your mailbox, and when an investor messages you saying that it's interesting, then the agent will go and say, would you like to create an investment agreement, or maybe even negotiate with the terms with the investor. So to think about how you may use AI to accomplish something in a completely different way, this is non-trivial, right? And initially they're going to be skeptics who go, that's insane, who would ever use it, until 3 months later or a year later when everyone's using it. Okay, so were there any other slides? Otherwise, I'd like to pop off the slides and we're going to dive back into when you're ready to bring in humans. But I did like from our pre-notes the spec-driven development, because this is like a super interesting thing, right? Which is you can use AI to help create a spec, and then whether it's AI or humans building it, you've now avoided lots of wasted effort by honing into exactly what it is to be built, if I'm getting it right.
Absolutely. And if you'll let me do one more slide. So spec-driven development, it's incredibly important. Anthropic is adopting it widely. Microsoft is adopting it widely. You should learn all you can about spec-driven development. Here are some resources. We'll provide it in an email after this session as well. So what is spec-driven development? It really is just a very detailed explanation of what you want to build. Things like the way you typically do it is you will define the various users of your system. So let's say you have an admin, you have the main user, you have a sub user, and then you'll define what each of those users need to do on the system. Integrations you'll have, the goals of the system, a detailed explanation. This is absolute gold for actually implementing the system using agentic tools. And this is where the real value of your enterprise is going to be, is in these specs. Your code is going to be essentially worthless. And the reason it's going to be worthless is because I can take the spec and I can feed it into any of these agentic tools, and they'll be able to one-shot what you want built, assuming your spec is detailed enough.
So does this mean that when you are thinking about vibe coding something, you should have this sort of formula in front of you and you essentially, your prompts are going to be answering these questions.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And this spec-driven development, the best way to write this is by writing it with AI. The best product managers typically are tasked with creating these documents in more traditional software engineering organizations, and founders typically create these documents, even if they're not writing the documents themselves, they're thinking about it. The best product manager by far that I've found is ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. They are absolutely wonderful at helping you fill in the details. You can go into a ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I want to build a CRM for dentists. What are all the personas I need to think about?" And it'll come back to you and it'll say, you need to think about the dental hygienist, the dentist, the owner, the receptionist, the billing company, and a master admin. Boom, now you have them, even if you didn't think about them yourself. And you could tell it, give me all the tasks each one of those will do, and it will give it to you. So by working with AI, you'll be able to create absolutely brilliant specs that will then make implementation almost trivial. So that's the future of how we're going to get stuff done. And that's how you can use AI to give you a superpower that you may not necessarily have.
Very clever. Okay. So, and it segues somewhat with my initial things about how I, prompt lovable, do a competitor analysis, but also how you explain what it is that you want, and maybe even give it more free form itself to come up with the right answer, rather than, as you may be talking to a junior graphic designer, make the top heading say this and make the word say that, make the word say that. So at least if it comes up with the first pass, which you may love or you may not, you may be pleasantly surprised by the things it comes up with. Okay, so any more slides? But otherwise, I'm going to jump back into the
That's it.
persona of, okay, great. So let's turn off screen share. So, the persona that I have in mind is a founder, maybe a non-tech founder wanting to build something. Walk us through what you think they ought to be doing, maybe for, somebody with not much technical expertise, a bit or a lot, in terms of the best, AI vibe coding, and at what point, for example, they should call you to take over from, okay, I've made something myself. Where do I hand off to a human?
So we love working with entrepreneurs early in the process. So we're always here to help. But I would say, let's say you have a great idea for this dental CRM. You were a dentist and you know what you want. Doing a little competitive research, leveraging the AI tools, always good. Starting to create a spec is always good. Um, you might want to try and vibe code it a bit. Use Lovable, get something up and running. Show it to some of your dentist friends, gauge their interest. And let's say they come back and they say, yeah, we're super interested. This looks like something that's great. At that point, you're probably going to want to start to raise a little money. And that's when you pull in Anthony and Seed Legals. They get the safe going and all that. And so now you've got a little bit of money, you've got a nice little demo, you've got the starting spec, and now it's a great time to bring us in. And when you bring us in, we can help build that spec out a lot more, and then we can actually implement it. And it is orders of magnitude cheaper to implement things today than it was 5 years ago. You know, I would say in the previous generation, MVPs would cost anywhere from, I'll say this in dollars, translate as appropriate, anywhere from, 100,000 up to $500,000. And I think with the new with the way we leverage agentic tools and specs, you could chop a zero off that. And realistically, we are delivering more complex systems in less time than we did 5 years ago for mind-boggling sums. I mean, 50 grand is not unreasonable. Really, just incredible.
Okay, so for my dental app, we'll go with your theme. I've spent the first $50,000 of my investor money buying Toothy.ai, and I've now got my cool domain name. So what's your preferred state of sort of development that people come to you or somebody else that's going to build the app? Would you prefer that they just give you like I want an app that does this? You prefer they give you a spec? Do you prefer they've given you something that they've built as far as they can, thinking they'd build the whole thing and then failed, and they go, please fix it, take it up? What's the sweet spot that people
Well,
should aim for so they don't waste too much of your time, but get the best bang for the buck by giving over a suitably well spec'd idea?
so the closer to a good spec you have, the less the less chasing our tails we'll have to do. The more you've thought it through, the less we'll have to walk you through how to think it through. We're happy to do it, but the closer you get to a decent spec, the closer we're going to get to being able to take that and turn it into a production ready system within
Okay.
weeks.
All right. Now, obviously, it's like asking what's the length of a piece of string, but what amounts should people assume today to build, simple apps, having come up with something they've created a mock-up in some vibe coding tools and
Yeah.
they've come to you?
So it really is shocking, but the numbers I gave you are true. 5 years ago, I would say don't talk to us until you have $500,000 in capital. Um, Today, you could talk to us for between 50 and $100,000, and you're talking about a robust, production-ready, scalable app, unheard of for those
Right.
kinds of numbers in the previous generation. But we're doing it. We've done it. We've done it repeatedly, and so it's when you're thinking about building and productizing your app, you need to make sure that whoever you're using is using these tools. If they're not using these tools and they're doing it the traditional way, you're going to be paying for money, paying for stuff you don't need to these days.
Okay. All right. So then perhaps one of the last things before we wrap up, which is for people who've got their own software development teams, I think one challenge is that older software developers, often starting with CTO, don't want to change as rapidly as young people. So how much should you be pushing your software team to be using these tools, to be using Cursor and so on, and maybe people who are not are about to do themselves out of a job because, hey, they just are wasting more of your money? Or is that still very much hype and, they're not about to be out of a job because they're not using AI as much?
It's not hype; it's reality. And if they're telling you, "Hey, invest in horses," when there's automobiles being produced, you're making a big mistake. And if you're investing in traditional software methodologies, particularly as an entrepreneur, you're wasting your time and your money. You need to be working with the leading edge technologies and with folks who are on the forefront of this thinking. Otherwise, you're doing yourself and your idea a disservice.
Very
And,
interesting.
and sometimes you can't bring old timers onto the new stuff, and that's fine. You're just going to have to shed them and move on.
And your next generation of CTOs will be 20-something-year-olds because they're just born in the new way of working. All right.
Absolutely, exactly.
Gus, this was super helpful. Where can people find you and when should they come to you?
So I can be found at gus@cogito.com. I'm putting it in the chat. Gus, Gus, at xogito.com. Feel free to shoot me an email, and you can come to me at any stage. If you're ready for us, great. If you're not ready for us and you need some advice, you want some help, we're always happy to provide some free advice.
All right, that's fantastic. And importantly, people now also know how to pronounce Xogito as Cogito. And,
Yes.
I look forward to us doing an event together in January in New York, an in-person pitch event. And I think the winner gets some simple app built, which is going to
Yes.
be amazing. So there are going to be more details on that for everybody. So thank you so much, everyone. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but we've hit time. So thank you, everyone, and please reach out to Gus or me with any questions on anything we can help with. And of course, please do send me, in particular, if you are fundraising, your sample websites. I should never volunteer this, but I'm always delighted at least to try to give feedback on it. And I must make 3 lovable websites a week when I look at customer ideas. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And Gus, it was a
Thank you so
privilege and a
much.
pleasure.
Excellent session and
Thank
nice
you,
meeting
Anthony.
you, Gus. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye
And
all.
thank you to Holly. Let's not
Thanks,
forget
Holly.
Holly. She did a great job.
Exactly.
Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
Holly.
Bye-bye.